Okay, let's chant Namo Tassa together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Tonight we are starting on the Digha Nikaya. Today also happens to be the first day of the Vasa 2011, and I hope within these 3 months of the Vasa to finish all the suttas in the Digha Nikaya plus the 6 books of the Khuddaka Nikaya. And so tonight we start with the Digha Nikaya. Now the Digha Nikaya means the long discourses of the Buddha. Digha means long, and Nikaya means collections of the discourses. According to the very much respected historian Professor Akira Hirakawa, in his book The History of Buddhism, I think, he says that the true Dhamma existed for 500 years. Actually, this is what the Buddha says, that the true Dhamma will last for 500 years, meaning that after 500 years, the Buddha warned that it will be polluted. So within these 500 years, we see about 250 years after the Buddha's passing away, Emperor Asoka was the emperor in India, and he was a great supporter of Buddhism. So he erected these stone pillars where the carvings of the Buddha's words were made. And now that they have dug up these Asoka pillars, they find that during Asoka's time there were 5 Nikayas. So this is the real Dhamma of the Buddha, the 5 Nikayas, the 5 collections of discourses. And I always stress that there's a very important sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 4.180, where the Buddha said, if any monk says that the Buddha taught in such and such a way, that the Buddha said such and such, the Buddha said not to accept it and not to reject it, but to compare it with the suttas and the Vinaya. But the Vinaya is the monastic discipline which concerns only monks and nuns. As far as the Dhamma is concerned, the Buddha says, refer only to the early suttas. So these 5 collections, Nikayas, are actually the words of the Buddha. But unfortunately, the Khuddaka Nikaya has been expanded over the years. And we see, like in 1956, the Burmese added 3 books, which everyone knows are not the words of the Buddha, into the Khuddaka Nikaya. And so from there we know how this Khuddaka Nikaya expanded. Actually, Khuddaka Nikaya means a minor collection, but it has expanded to become a major collection, even more than the other 4 Nikayas. So this Digha Nikaya is one of the early Nikayas which have not been added to. If you say there's some pollution, maybe a little bit, but not much. Now, the Digha Nikaya, the English translation was first done by the Pali Text Society, the husband and wife team, T.W. Rhys Davids and Catherine Rhys Davids. And then the latest translation is by Dr. Maurice Walsh. So now the Digha Nikaya consists of 34 suttas and 3 sections. The first one, the Sila Kanda Vaga, the moralities, consists of sutta number 1 until number 13. And the second section, the great division of Mahavagga, is the suttas number 14 until 23. And then the third or last is the Patika division, Patika Vagga, from suttas 24 up to 34. So I'll start with the first sutta, which is the Brahmajala Sutta, the supreme net, what the teaching is not. Some monks consider this to be a very important sutta, but to me a sutta is very important if people listen to it and become enlightened or partially enlightened. But if no one becomes enlightened, either path or fruit, then to me it's not so important. So this Brahmajala Sutta, it just tells us about the different views, the different wrong views that existed during the Buddha's time. Okay, thus have I heard. Once the Lord was traveling along the main road between Rajagaha and Nalanda with a large company of some 500 monks. And the wanderer Suppiya was also traveling on that road with his pupil, the youth Brahmadatta. And Suppiya was finding fault in all sorts of ways with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, whereas his pupil Brahmadatta was speaking in various ways in their praise. And so these two, teacher and pupil, directly opposing each other's arguments, followed close behind the Lord and his Sangha of monks. Then the Lord stopped for one night with his monks at the royal park of Ambalatika, and Suppiya too stopped there for the night with his pupil Brahmadatta. And Suppiya went on abusing the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, while his pupil Brahmadatta defended them. And thus disputing, they followed close behind the Buddha and his Sangha, or order of monks. Now in the early morning, a number of monks, having got up, gathered together and sat in the round pavilion. And this was the trend of their talk. It is wonderful, friends, it is marvelous how the blessed Lord, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, knows, sees, and clearly distinguishes the different inclinations of beings. For here is the wanderer Suppiya, finding fault in all sorts of ways with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, while his pupil Brahmadatta in various ways defends them. And still disputing, they follow closely behind the blessed Lord and his Sangha of monks. Then the Lord, being aware of what those monks were saying, went to the round pavilion and sat down on the prepared seat. Then he said, "Monks, what was the subject of your conversation just now? What talk have I interrupted?" I'll stop here for a moment. So here you see the Suppiya and his disciple following behind the Buddha and the monks, and they were arguing. One was praising the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. One was talking bad. And some of the monks know, so probably because the Buddha and many of his disciples, Arahant disciples, had psychic power, so they knew what the Suppiya and Brahmadatta were talking about. Just as the Buddha here is aware of what his monks were saying, and he went to the pavilion to talk to them. And they told him. So they told him what was happening between Brahmadatta and his teacher Suppiya. And the Buddha said, "Monks, if anyone should speak in disparagement of me, of the Dhamma or of the Sangha, you should not be angry, resentful, or upset on that account. If you were to be angry or displeased at such disparagement, that would only be a hindrance to you. For if others disparage me, the Dhamma or the Sangha, and you are angry or displeased, can you recognize whether what they say is right or not? No, Lord. If others disparage me, the Dhamma or the Sangha, then you must explain what is incorrect as being incorrect, saying, that is incorrect, that is false, that is not our way, that is not found among us. But monks, if others should speak in praise of me, of the Dhamma or of the Sangha, you should not on that account be pleased, happy or elated. If you were to be pleased, happy or elated at such praise, that would only be a hindrance to you. If others praise me, the Dhamma or the Sangha, you should acknowledge the truth of what is true, saying, that is correct, that is right, that is our way, that is found among us. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, he's telling his monks not to be angry or not to be too happy, because emotions, if you get very happy one day, another day you're going to be very sad, because you allow your emotions to sway. So the Buddha's teachings is to control our emotions. Don't be too happy so that you won't be too sad when sorrow comes. And to have a hold on our mind, don't let it move so much. And the Buddha continued, it is monks, for elementary inferior matters of moral practice, that the worldling would praise the Tathagata. And what are these elementary inferior matters for which the worldling would praise him? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is going to go into the list of moral conduct that the Buddha and his disciples practice, and which the Buddha says people praise him for it. But to the Buddha, praising this moral practice, although it's necessary, the Buddha says it is inferior. There are higher things. Okay, the first part, the short section on morality. Abandoning the taking of life, the ascetic Gotama dwells refraining from taking life, without stick or sword, scrupulous, compassionate, trembling for the welfare of all living beings. Thus the worldling would praise the Tathagata. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, the ascetic Gotama dwells refraining from taking what is not given, living purely, accepting what is given, awaiting what is given, without stealing. Abandoning unchastity, the ascetic Gotama lives far from it, aloof from the village practice of sex. Abandoning false speech, the ascetic Gotama dwells refraining from false speech, a truth speaker, one to be relied on, trustworthy, dependable, not a deceiver of the world. Abandoning malicious speech, he does not repeat there what he has heard here, to the detriment of these, or repeat here what he has heard there, to the detriment of those. Thus he is a reconciler of those at variance, and an encourager of those at one, rejoicing in peace, loving it, delighting in it, one who speaks up for peace. Abandoning harsh speech, he refrains from it. He speaks whatever is blameless, pleasing to the ear, agreeable, reaching the heart, urbane, pleasing and attractive to the multitude. Abandoning idle chatter, he speaks at the right time, what is correct and to the point of Dhamma and Vinaya. He is a speaker whose words are to be treasured, seasonable, reasoned, well-defined and connected with the goal. Thus the worldling would praise the Tathagata. So here the Buddha is talking about the 7 precepts. In the early discourses of the Buddha usually talks about these 7 precepts. These 7 precepts are also considered the Aryan Sila, Aryan moral conduct. In the Noble Eightfold Path, 3 factors comprise the Sila component: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right speech consists of 4 precepts: not to lie, not to carry tales, to cause quarrel and fights, not to speak coarse or vulgar words, and not to engage in idle gossip. These are the 4 precepts under right speech. Under right action, you have 3 precepts: not to kill, not to steal, or here it says not to take what is not given, and not to engage in sexual misconduct. And then right livelihood, actually there are no precepts there because it is covered by right speech and right action. Right livelihood means you earn a livelihood without harming others. So these 3 together consist of 7 precepts. So if a person upholds these 7 precepts and he understands the Dhamma, then he can become an Arya. So these 7 precepts are very important. The ascetic Gotama is a refrainer from damaging seeds and crops. He eats once a day and not at night, refraining from eating at improper times. He avoids watching dancing, singing, music, and shows. He abstains from using garlands, perfumes, cosmetics, ornaments, and adornments. He avoids using high and wide beds. He avoids accepting gold and silver, in other words, money. He avoids accepting raw grain or raw flesh. He does not accept women and young girls, male or female slaves, sheep and goats, cocks and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares, fields and plots. He refrains from running errands, from buying and selling, from cheating with false weights and measures, from bribery and corruption, deception and insincerity, from wounding, killing, imprisoning, highway robbery, and taking food by force. Thus the worldling would praise the Tathagata. So here, these are the other precepts which make up for the 10 precepts of a Samanera. Okay, then the middle section of morality. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, are addicted to the destruction of such seeds as are propagated from roots, from stems, from joints, from cuttings, from seeds, the ascetic Gotama refrains from such destruction. Thus the worldling would praise the Tathagata. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, remain addicted to the enjoyment of stored up goods such as food, drink, clothing, carriages, beds, perfumes, meat, the ascetic Gotama refrains from such enjoyment. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, etc., remain addicted to attending such shows as dancing, singing, music, displays, recitations, hand music, cymbals and drums, fairy shows, acrobatic and conjuring tricks, combats of elephants, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, cocks and quail, fighting with staves, boxing, wrestling, sham fights, parades, maneuvers and military reviews, the ascetic Gotama refrains from attending such displays. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to such games and idle pursuits as 8 or 10 row chess, chess in the air, hopscotch, spillikins, dicing, hitting sticks, hand pictures, ball games, blowing through toy pipes, playing with toy plows, turning somersaults, playing with toy windmills, measures, carriages and bows, guessing letters, guessing thoughts, mimicking deformities, the ascetic Gotama refrains from such idle pursuits. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to high and wide beds and long chairs, couches adorned with animal figures, fleecy or variegated coverlets, coverlets with hair on both sides or one side, silk coverlets embroidered with gems or without, elephant, horse or chariot rugs, choice spreads of antelope hide, couches with awnings, or with red cushions at both ends, the ascetic Gotama refrains from such high and wide beds. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to such forms of self-adornment and embellishment as rubbing the body with perfumes, massaging, bathing in scented water, shampooing, using mirrors, ointments, garlands, scents, unguents, cosmetics, bracelets, headbands, fancy sticks, bottles, swords, sunshades, decorated sandals, turbans, gems, yak-tail fans, long fringed white robes, the ascetic Gotama refrains from such self-adornment. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to such unedifying conversation as about kings, robbers, ministers, armies, dangers, wars, food, drink, clothes, beds, garlands, perfumes, relatives, carriages, villages, towns and cities, countries, women, heroes, street and well gossip, talk of the departed, desultory chat, speculations about land and sea, talk about being and non-being, the ascetic Gotama refrains from such conversation. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to disputation such as, you don't understand this doctrine and discipline, Dhammavuddho. I do. How could you understand this doctrine and discipline? Your way is all wrong, mine is right. I am consistent, you aren't. You said last what you should have said first, and you said first what you should have said last. What you took so long to think up has been refuted. Your argument has been overthrown, you are defeated. Go on, save your doctrine, get out of that if you can. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such disputation, whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to such things as running errands and messages, such as for kings, ministers, nobles, Brahmins, householders, and young men who say, "Go here, go there, take this there, bring that from there." The ascetic Gotama refrains from such errand running, whereas some ascetics and Brahmins remain addicted to deception, patter, hinting, belittling, and are always on the make for further gains. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such deception. Thus the worldling would praise the Tathagata. Stop for a moment. So here you see some of these conducts are expansion of the 10 precepts, luxurious living. And the last part, now 1.20, this deception, patter, hinting, belittling, on the make for further gains. This is considered wrong livelihood for the monk. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, make their living by such base arts, such wrong means of livelihood as palmistry, divining by signs, portents, dreams, body marks, mouth gnawings, fire oblations, oblations from a ladle of husk, rice powder, rice grains, ghee or oil, from the mouth or of blood, reading the fingertips, house and garden law, skill in charms, ghost law, earth house law, snake law, poison law, rat law, bird law, crow law, foretelling a person's lifespan, charms against arrows, knowledge of animals' cries. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Stop here for a moment. You see here, palmistry, fortune telling is not allowed for a monk. And divining by signs, meaning geomancy, what we call hong sui, feng shui, also not allowed for a monk. Wrong livelihood for a monk. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as judging the marks of gems, sticks, clothes, swords, spears, arrows, weapons, women, men, boys, girls, male and female slaves, elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, cows, goats, rams, cocks, quail, iguanas, bamboo rats, tortoises, deer. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as predicting the chiefs will march out, the chiefs will march back. Our chiefs will advance and the other chiefs will retreat. Our chiefs will win and the other chiefs will lose. The other chiefs will win and ours will lose. Thus there will be victory for one side and defeat for the other. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as predicting an eclipse of the moon, the sun, a star, that the sun and moon will go on their proper course or will go astray, that a star will go on its proper course or will go astray, that there will be a shower of meteors, a blaze in the sky, an earthquake, thunder, a rising, setting, darkening, brightening of the moon, the sun, the stars, and such will be the outcome of these things. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as predicting good or bad rainfall, a good or bad harvest, security, danger, disease, health, or accounting, computing, calculating, poetic composition, philosophizing. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins make their living by such base arts as arranging the giving and taking in marriage, engagements and divorces, declaring the time for saving and spending, bringing good or bad luck, procuring abortions, using spells to bind the tongue, binding the jaw, making the hands jerk, causing deafness, getting answers with a mirror, a girl medium, a deva, worshipping the sun or great Brahma, breathing fire, invoking the goddess of luck. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. Whereas some ascetics and Brahmins, feeding on the food of the faithful, make their living by such base arts, such wrong means of livelihood, as appeasing the devas and redeeming vows to them, making earth house spells, causing virility or impotence, preparing and consecrating building sites, giving ritual rinsings and bathings, making sacrifices, giving emetics, purges, expectorants, and phlegmagogues, giving ear, eye, nose medicine, ointments and counter-ointments, eye surgery, pediatry, using balms to counter the side effects of previous remedies. The ascetic Gotama refrains from such base arts and wrong means of livelihood. It is monks for such elementary, inferior matters of moral practice that the worldling would praise the Tathagata. So here you see the different shaman practices, predictions, making predictions and all that. All this the Buddha says is wrong livelihood. But because the Buddha practices these things, he gets praised for not indulging all these predictions and wrong means of livelihood. But the Buddha still says these are inferior matters of moral practice. There are amongst other matters profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, excellent, beyond mere thought, subtle, to be experienced by the wise, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. And what are these matters? There are amongst some ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the past, having fixed views about the past, and who put forward various speculative theories about the past in 18 different ways. I stop here for a moment. So here is there are 18 different wrong views about the self and the world based on the past. On what basis, on what grounds do they do so? There are some ascetics and Brahmins who are eternalists, who proclaim the eternity of the self and the world in 4 ways. On what grounds? Here monks, a certain ascetic or Brahmin has, by means of effort, exertion, application, earnestness, and right attention, attained to such a state of mental concentration that he thereby recalls past existences, 1 birth, 2 births, 3, 4, 5, 10 births, 100, 1,000, 100,000 births, several hundred, several thousand, several 100,000 births. There my name was so and so, my clan was so and so, my caste was so and so, my food was such and such, I experienced such and such pleasant and painful conditions, I lived for so long. Having passed away from there, I arose there. There my name was so and so, and having passed away from there, I arose here. Thus he remembers various past lives, the conditions and details. And he says, the self and the world are eternal, barren like a mountain peak, set firmly as a post. These beings rush around, circulate, pass away and re-arise. But this remains eternally. Why so? I have by means of effort, exertion, attained to such a state of mental concentration that I have thereby recalled various past existences. That is how I know the self and the world are eternal. That is the first way in which some ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the eternity of the self and the world. And what is the second way? Here monks, a certain ascetic or Brahmin has by means of effort, exertion, etc., attained to such a state of mental concentration that he thereby recalls 1 period of contraction and expansion, 2 such periods, 3, 4, 5, 10 periods of contraction and expansion. There my name was so and so. That is the second way in which some ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the eternity of the self and the world. Stop here for a moment. Here, a period of contraction expansion refers to a world cycle. A world cycle. There's a time when the world expands and a time when the world contracts. And this refers to the stars. Expansion means the stars go away from each other. The galaxy expands. The stars go away from each other. And after some time, it will collapse. That is contraction. And the stars come closer and closer together until they come together and burn. That will be the end of the world. And what is the third way? Here monks of Brahma has by means of effort, etc., attained to such a state of mental concentration that he recalls 10, 20, 30, 40 periods of contraction and expansion. There my name was so and so, etc. That is the third way in which some ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the eternity of the self and the world. And what is the fourth way? Here a certain ascetic or Brahmin is a logician, a reasoner, hammering it out by reason, following his own line of thought, he argues. The self and the world are eternal, barren like a mountain peak, set firmly as a post. These beings rush around, circulate, pass away and re-arise, but this remains forever. That is the fourth way in which some ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the eternity of the self and the world. These are the four ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins are eternalists and proclaim the eternity of the self and the world on four grounds. And whatever ascetics or Brahmins are eternalists and proclaim the eternity of the self and the world, they do so on one or other of these four grounds. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands, these few viewpoints thus grasped and adhered to will lead to such and such destinations in another world. This the Tathagata knows and more, but he is not attached to that knowledge, and being thus unattached, he has experienced for himself perfect peace, and having truly understood the arising and passing away of feelings, their attraction and peril, and the deliverance from them, the Tathagata is liberated without remainder. There are amongst other matters profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, excellent, beyond mere thought, subtle, to be experienced by the wise, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. And what are these matters? There are among some ascetics and Brahmins who are partly eternalists and partly non-eternalists, who proclaim the partial eternity and the partial non-eternity of the self and the world in four ways. On what grounds? There comes a time, monks, sooner or later, after a long period, when this world contracts. At the time of contraction, beings are mostly reborn in the Abhasara Brahma world, and there they dwell, mind-made, feeding on delight, self-luminous, moving through the air, glorious, and they stay like that for a very long time. But the time comes, sooner or later, after a long period, when this world begins to expand. In this expanding world, an empty palace of Brahma appears. And then one being, from exhaustion of his lifespan or of his merits, falls from the Abhasara world and arises in the empty Brahma palace. And there he dwells, mind-made, feeding on delight, self-luminous, moving through the air, glorious. And he stays like that for a very long time. Stop here for a moment. This Abhasara Brahma world refers to the second jhana heavens. When the world ends, then the beings are reborn. They practice meditation and they are reborn in the second jhana heaven. And after a long time, this being in the second jhana heaven, he falls down from there to the first jhana heaven, which is the Brahma world. Then in this being who has been alone for so long, there arises unrest, discontent and worry, and he thinks, oh, if only some other beings would come here. And other beings from exhaustion of their lifespan or of their merit fall from the Abhasara world and arise in the Brahma palace as companions for this being. And there they dwell, mind-made, etc. And they stay like that for a very long time. And then monks, that being who first arose there thinks, I am Brahma, the great Brahma, the conqueror, the unconquered, the all-seeing, the all-powerful Lord, the maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, father of all that have been and shall be. These beings were created by me. How so? Because I first had this thought, oh, if only some other beings would come here. That was my wish. And then those beings came into this existence. But those beings who arose subsequently think, this friend is Brahma, great Brahma, the conqueror, the unconquered, the all-seeing, the all-powerful, the Lord, maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, father of all that have been and shall be. How so? We have seen that he was here first, and that we arose after him. And this being that arose first is longer lived, more beautiful and more powerful than they are. And it may happen that some being falls from that realm and arises in this world. Having arisen in this world, he goes forth from the household life into homelessness. Having gone forth, He, by means of effort, exertion, application, earnestness, and right attention, attains to such a degree of mental concentration that he thereby recalls his last existence, but he recalls none before that, and he thinks that Brahma, he made us, and he is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, the same forever and ever. But we who were created by that Brahma, we are impermanent, unstable, short-lived, fated to fall away, and we have come to this world. This is the first case whereby some ascetics and Brahmins are partly eternalists and partly non-eternalists. And what is the second way? There are among certain devas called corrupted by pleasure. They spend an excessive amount of time addicted to merriment, play and enjoyment, so that their mindfulness is dissipated, and by the dissipation of mindfulness, those beings fall from that state. And it can happen that a being, having fallen from that state, arises in this world. Having arisen in this world, he goes forth from the household of life into homelessness. Having gone forth, he by means of effort, exertion, etc., recalls his last existence, but recalls none before that. He thinks, those reverend devas who are not corrupted by pleasure do not spend an excessive amount of time addicted to merriment, play and enjoyment. Thus their mindfulness is not dissipated, and so they do not fall from that state. They are permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, the same forever and ever. But we who are corrupted by pleasure spend an excessive amount of time addicted to merriment, play and enjoyment. Thus we, by the dissipation of mindfulness, have fallen from that state. We are impermanent, unstable, short-lived, fated to fall away, and we have come to this world. This is the second case. And what is the third way? There are among certain devas called corrupted in mind. They spend an excessive amount of time regarding each other with envy. By this means their minds are corrupted. On account of their corrupted minds, they become weary in body and mind, and they fall from that place. And it can happen that a being, having fallen from that state, arises in this world. He recalls his last existence, but recalls none before that. He thinks, those reverend devas who are not corrupted in mind do not spend an excessive amount of time regarding each other with envy. They do not become corrupted in mind or weary in body and mind, and so they do not fall from that state. They are permanent, stable, eternal. But we who are corrupted in mind are impermanent, unstable, short-lived, fated to fall away, and we have come to this world. This is the third case. And what is the fourth way? Here, a certain ascetic or Brahmin is a logician, a reasoner. Hammering it out by reason, following his own line of thought, he argues, whatever is called eye or ear or nose or tongue or body, that is impermanent, unstable, non-eternal, liable to change. But what is called thought or mind or consciousness, that is a self that is permanent, stable, eternal, not subject to change, the same forever and ever. This is the fourth case. These are the four ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins are partly eternalists and partly non-eternalists. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the partial eternity and the partial non-eternity of the self and the world, they do so on one or other of these four grounds. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands, these viewpoints are grasped and adhered to will lead to such and such destinations in another world. This the Tathagata knows and more. But he is not attached to that knowledge, and being thus unattached, he has experienced for himself perfect peace, and having truly understood the arising and passing away of feelings, their attraction and peril, and the deliverance from them, the Tathagata is liberated without remainder. These monks are those other matters, profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, excellent, beyond mere thought, subtle, to be experienced by the wise, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. Stop here for a moment. You see here under 2.15, the Buddha says, the Tathagata, the Buddha knows this and much more, but he is not attached to that knowledge. And so he experiences perfect peace. He understands the arising and passing away of feelings, the attraction and peril and the deliverance from them. So feelings is something that gives us a lot of suffering if we don't know how to control our feelings. All the dukkha, all the suffering in the world is only because of being unable to control our feelings. So if we cultivate our mind and have a strong mind, only then can we have a mind that is solid as a rock, that will not move. Because external conditions always move our mind and emotions change. But if our mind is strong, then we are not moved by external conditions, especially what the Buddha calls the 8 winds that try to move us. There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who are finitists and infinitists, and who proclaim the finitude and infinitude of the world on 4 grounds. What are they? Here, a certain ascetic or Brahmin has, by means of effort, etc., attained to such a state of concentration that he dwells perceiving the world as finite. He thinks, this world is finite and bounded by a circle. How so? Because I have attained to such a state of concentration that I dwell perceiving the world as finite. Therefore, I know that this world is finite and bounded by a circle. This is the first case. And what is the second way? Here, a certain ascetic or Brahmin has attained to such a state of concentration that he dwells perceiving the world as infinite. He thinks, this world is infinite and unbounded. Those ascetics and Brahmins who say it is finite and bounded are wrong. How so? Because I have attained to such a state of concentration that I dwell perceiving the world as infinite. Therefore, I know that this world is infinite and unbounded. This is the second case. And what is the third way? Here, a certain ascetic or Brahmin has attained to such a state of consciousness that he dwells perceiving the world as finite up and down and infinite across. He thinks, the world is finite and infinite. Those ascetics and Brahmins who say it is finite are wrong, and those who say it is infinite are wrong. How so? Because I have attained to such a state of concentration that I dwell perceiving the world as finite, up and down, and infinite across. Therefore, I know that the world is both finite and infinite. This is the third case. And what is the fourth case? Here, a certain ascetic or Brahmin is a logician, a reasoner. Hammering it out by reason, he argues, this world is neither finite nor infinite. Those who say it is finite are wrong, and those who say it is infinite, and so are those who say it is infinite, and those who say it is finite and infinite. This world is neither finite nor infinite. This is the fourth case. These are the 4 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins are finitists and infinitists, and proclaim the finitude and infinitude of the world on 4 grounds. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands. These viewpoints are thus grasped and adhered to will lead to such and such destinations in another world. These monks are those other matters, profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, excellent, beyond mere thought, subtle, to be experienced by the wise, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who are ill-rigorous. When asked about this or that matter, they resort to evasive statements and they wriggle like eels on 4 grounds. What are they? In this case, there is an ascetic or Brahmin who does not in truth know whether a thing is good or bad. He thinks, I do not in truth know whether this is good or whether it is bad. Not knowing which is right, I might declare that is good or that is bad, and that might be a lie, and that would distress me. If I were distressed, that would be a hindrance to me. Thus, fearing to lie, abhorring to lie, he does not declare a thing to be good or bad, but when asked about this or that matter, he resorts to evasive statements and wriggles like an eel. I don't say this, I don't say that, I don't say it is otherwise, I don't say it is not, I don't say it is, I don't say it is not, I don't not say it is not. That is the first case. What is the second way? Here, an ascetic or Brahmin does not in truth know whether a thing is good or bad. He thinks, I might declare that is good or that is bad, and I might feel desire or lust or hatred or aversion. If I felt desire, lust, hatred or aversion, that would be attachment on my part. If I felt attachment, that would distress me. And if I were distressed, that would be a hindrance to me. Thus, fearing attachment, abhorring attachment, he resorts to evasive statements. This is the second case. What is the third way? Here an ascetic or Brahmin does not in truth know whether a thing is good or bad. He thinks, I might declare that is good or that is bad. But there are some ascetics and Brahmins who are wise, skillful, practiced debaters, like archers who can split hairs, who go around destroying others' views with their wisdom. And they might cross-examine me, demanding my reasons and arguing. I might not be able to reply. Not being able to reply would distress me, and if I were distressed, that would be a hindrance to me. Thus, fearing debate, abhorring debate, resorts to evasive statements. This is the third case. What is the fourth way? Here an ascetic or Brahmin is dull and stupid. Because of his dullness and stupidity, when he is questioned, he resorts to evasive statements and wriggles like an eel. If you ask me whether there is another world, if I thought so, I would say, there is another world. But I don't say so, and I don't say otherwise, and I don't say it is not, and I don't say it, and I don't not say it is not. Is there another world? Is there both another world and no other world? Is there neither another world nor another world? Are there spontaneously born beings? Are there not? Are there both or neither? Does the Tathagata exist after death? Does he not exist after death? Does he both exist and not exist after death? Does he neither exist nor not exist after death? If I thought so, I would say so. I don't say it is not. This is the fourth case. These are the four ways in which those ascetics and Brahmins are eel-wrigglers, resort to evasive statements. There is no other way. This monks, the Tathagata understands. These viewpoints, thus grasped and adhered to, will lead to such and such destinations in another world. These monks are those other matters, profound, hard to see, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who are chance originationists and who proclaim the chance origin of the world and the self on two grounds. What are they? There are monks, certain devas called unconscious, asanya. As soon as a perception arises in them, those devas fall from that realm. And it may happen that a being falls from that realm and arises in this world. He recalls his last existence, but none before that. He thinks. He thinks, the self and the world have arisen by chance. How so? Before this I did not exist. Now from not being I have been brought to being. This is the first case. What is the second case? Here an ascetic or Brahmin is a logician, a reasoner. He hammers out his own opinion and declares, the self and the world have arisen by chance. This is the second case. These are the two ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins who are chance originists proclaim the chance origin of the self and the world. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands. These monks are those other matters, profound, hard to see, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. And these monks are the 18 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins are speculators about the past. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands. There are monks and ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the future, having fixed views about the future, and who put forward various speculative theories about the future in 44 different ways. On what basis, on what grounds do they do so? There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who proclaim a doctrine of conscious self-mortem survival, and do so in 16 different ways. On what basis? They declare that the self after death is healthy and conscious and material, or immaterial. Number 3, both material and immaterial. 4, neither material nor immaterial. 5, infinite. 6, 5, finite. 6, infinite. 7, both. 8, neither. 9, of uniform perception. 10, of varied perception. 11, of limited perception. 12, of unlimited perception. 13, wholly happy. 14, wholly miserable. 15, both. 16, neither. These are the 16 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the doctrine of conscious post-mortem survival. There is no other way. This monks the Tathagata understands. These monks are those other matters profound, hard to see, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who proclaim the doctrine of unconscious post-mortem survival, and they do so in 8 ways. On what basis? They declare that the self after death is healthy and unconscious, and 1, material, 2, immaterial, 3, both, 4, neither, 5, finite, 6, infinite, 7, both, 8, neither. These are the 8 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins proclaim a doctrine of unconscious post-mortem survival. There is no other way. These monks the Tathagata understands. These monks are those other matters profound, hard to see, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who declare a doctrine of neither conscious nor unconscious post-mortem survival, and they do so in 8 ways. On what basis? They declare that the self after death is healthy and neither conscious nor unconscious, and 1, material, 2, immaterial, 3, both, 4, neither, 5, finite, 6, infinite, 7, both, 8, neither. These are the 8 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins proclaim a doctrine of neither conscious nor unconscious post-mortem survival. There is no other way. These monks the Tathagata understands. These monks are those other matters profound, hard to see, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who are annihilationists, who proclaim the annihilation, destruction, and non-existence of beings, and they do so in 7 ways. On what basis? Here a certain ascetic or Brahmin declares and holds the view, since this self is material, composed of the 4 great elements, the product of mother and father, at the breaking up of the body it is annihilated and perishes, and does not exist after death. This is the way in which this self is annihilated. That is how some proclaim the annihilation, destruction, and non-existence of beings. Another says to him, "Sir, there is such a self as you say. I don't deny it. But that self is not wholly annihilated. There is another self, divine, material, belonging to the sense sphere, fed on real food. You don't know it or see it, but I do. It is this self that at the breaking up of the body perishes." Another says to him, "Sir, there is such a self as you say. I don't deny it. But that self is not wholly annihilated. There is another self, divine, material, mind-made, complete with all its parts, not defective in any sense organ. It is this self that at the breaking up of the body perishes." Another says to him, "Sir, there is such a self as you say. There is another self which, by passing entirely beyond bodily sensations, by the disappearance of all sense of resistance, and by non-attraction to the perception of diversity, seeing that space is infinite, has realized the sphere of infinite space. It is this self that at the breaking up of the body perishes." Another says to him, "There is another self which, by passing entirely beyond the sphere of infinite space, seeing that consciousness is infinite, has realized the sphere of infinite consciousness. It is this self that at the breaking up of the body perishes." Another says to him, "There is another self which, by passing entirely beyond the sphere of infinite consciousness, seeing that there is no thing, has realized the sphere of no thingness. It is this self that at the breaking up of the body perishes." Another says to him, "Sir, there is such a self as you say. I don't deny it. But that self is not wholly annihilated. For there is another self, which by passing entirely beyond the sphere of nothingness and seeing, this is peaceful, this is sublime, has realized the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. You don't know it or see it, but I do. It is this self that at the breaking up of the body is annihilated and perishes, and does not exist after death. This is the way in which the self is completely annihilated." That is how some proclaim the annihilation, destruction and non-existence of beings. These are the 7 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins proclaim a doctrine of annihilation, destruction and non-existence of beings, and there is no other way. These monks the Tathagata understands. These monks are those other matters, profound, hard to see, etc., which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super-knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. There are monks, some ascetics and Brahmins, who are proclaimers of Nibbana here and now, and who proclaim Nibbana here and now for an existent being in 5 ways. On what grounds? Here a certain ascetic or Brahmin declares and holds the view, in as far as this self, being furnished and endowed with the 5-fold sense pleasures, indulges in them, then that is when the self realizes the highest Nibbana here and now. So some proclaim it. Another says to him, Sir, there is such a self as you say, I don't deny it, but that is not where the self realizes the highest Nibbana here and now. Why so? Because, sir, sense desires are impermanent, painful and subject to change. And from their change and transformation, there arise sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and distress. But when this self, detached from sense desires, detached from unwholesome states, enters and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought directed and sustained, and the delight and happiness born of detachment, that is when the self realizes the highest Nibbana here and now. Another says to him, Sir, there is such a self as you say, but that is not when the self attains Nibbana. How so? Because on account of thought directed and sustained, that state is considered gross. But when the self, by the subsiding of thought directed and sustained, enters and abides in the second jhana with inner tranquility and oneness of mind, or unity of mind, or one-pointedness of mind, which is free from thought directed and sustained, and is born of concentration, and is accompanied by delight and joy or happiness. That is when the self realizes the highest Nibbana here and now. This refers to the second jhana. Another says to him, Sir, there is such a self as you say, but that is not when the self attains Nibbana. How so? Because on account of the presence of delight, there is mental exhilaration, and that state is considered gross. But when the self, with the waning of delight, dwells in equanimity, mindful and clearly aware, experiencing in his own body that joy which the noble ones say, happy dwells one who has equanimity and mindfulness, and so enters and abides in the third jhana. That is when the self realizes the highest Nibbana here and now. Stop here for a moment. So this refers to the third jhana. And you see in this sutta, as in other suttas, in the third jhana, there is equanimity and mindfulness. Unlike what some monks say, that in state of jhana there is no mindfulness. Here there is equanimity and mindfulness. Another says to him, Sir, there is such a self as you say, I don't deny it, but that is not where the self experiences the highest Nibbana here and now. Why so? Because the mind contains the idea of joy, and that state is considered gross. But when, with the abandonment of pleasure and pain, with the disappearance of previous joy and grief, one enters and abides in a state beyond pleasure and pain, in the fourth jhana, which has utter purification of equanimity and mindfulness. The Pali is utter purification of equanimity and mindfulness. That is where the self realizes the highest Nibbana here and now. That is how some proclaim the highest Nibbana here and now for an existent being. I stop here for a moment. So here in this fourth jhana, the equanimity and the mindfulness is utterly purified. There is no higher equanimity and mindfulness than in the fourth jhana. This is what the sutta says. These are the 5 ways in which these ascetics and Brahmins proclaim the doctrine of Nibbana here and now. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands, etc., etc. These are the 44 ways in which those ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the future, having fixed ideas about the future, put forward various speculative views about the future. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands, etc. These are the 62 ways in which those ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the past, the future, or both, put forward views about these. There is no other way. These monks, the Tathagata understands. These viewpoints, thus grasped and adhered to, will lead to such and such destinations in another world. This the Tathagata knows more, but he is not attached to that knowledge. And being thus unattached, he has experienced for himself the perfect peace, and having truly understood the arising and passing away of feelings, their attraction and peril, and the deliverance from them, the Tathagata is liberated without remainder. These monks are those other matters, profound, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, excellent, beyond mere thought, subtle, to be experienced by the wise, which the Tathagata, having realized them by his own super knowledge, proclaims, and about which those who would truthfully praise the Tathagata would rightly speak. Thus monks, when those ascetics and Brahmins who are eternalists proclaim the eternity of the self and the world in 4 ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, the worry and vexillation of those immersed in craving. When those who are partly eternalists and partly non-eternalists proclaim the partial eternity and partial non-eternity of the self and the world in 4 ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, etc. When those who are finitists and infinitists proclaim the finitude and infinitude of the world on 4 grounds, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, etc. When those who are eel-wrigglers resort to evasive statements and wriggle like eels on 4 grounds, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, etc. When those who are chance originationists proclaim the chance origin of the self and the world on 2 grounds, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, etc. When those who are speculators about the past, having fixed views about the past, put forward various speculative views about the past in 18 different ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, the worry and vexillation of those immersed in craving. When those who proclaim a doctrine of conscious post-mortem survival do so in 16 different ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, etc. When those who proclaim a doctrine of unconscious post-mortem survival do so in 8 different ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, etc. When those who proclaim a doctrine of neither conscious nor unconscious post-mortem survival do so in 8 ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see. When those who are annihilationists proclaim the annihilation, destruction, and non-existence of beings in 7 ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see. When those who are proclaimers of Nibbana here and now proclaim Nibbana here and now for an existent being on 5 grounds, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see. When those who are speculators about the future in 44 different ways speculate about the future, do not know and see. When those ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the past, the future, or both, having fixed views, put forward views in 62 different ways, that is merely the feeling of those who do not know and see, the worry and vexillation of those immersed in craving. And those ascetics and Brahmins who are eternalists proclaim the eternity of the self and the world in 4 ways, that is conditioned by contact. Similarly, for the eternalists, non-eternalists, finitists and infinities, irregulars, chance originations, etc. Those ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the past, future, or both, having fixed views, put forward views in 62 different ways, that is conditioned by contact. Sorry for a moment. Conditioned by contact means contact at the 6 sense organs through seeing or hearing or smelling, taste, touch, and thinking. That all of these eternalists and the rest should experience that feeling without contact is impossible. With regard to all of these, they experience these feelings by repeated contact to the 6 sense bases. Feeling conditions craving, craving conditions clinging, clinging conditions becoming or being, being conditions birth, birth, conditions, aging and dying, sorrow, lamentation, sadness and distress. When a monk understands as they really are the arising and passing away of the 6 bases of contact, their attraction and peril, and the deliverance from them, he knows that which goes beyond all these views. Whatever ascetics and Brahmins who are speculators about the past or the future or both, having fixed views on the matter and put forth speculative views about it, these are all trapped in the net with its 62 divisions, and wherever they emerge and try to get out, they are caught and held in this net. Just as a skilled fisherman or his apprentice might cover a small piece of water with a fine mesh net, thinking, whatever larger creatures there may be in this water, they are all trapped in the net, caught and held in the net. So it is with all these. They are trapped and caught in this net. Monks, the body of the Tathagata stands with the link that bound it to becoming cut. As long as the body subsists, devas and humans will see him. But at the breaking up of the body and the exhaustion of the lifespan, devas and humans will see him no more. Monks, just as when the stalk of a bunch of mangoes has been cut, all the mangoes on it go with it. Just so the Tathagata's link with becoming has been cut. As long as the body subsists, devas and humans will see him. But at the breaking up of the body and the exhaustion of the lifespan, devas and humans will see him no more. At these words, the Venerable Ananda said to the Lord, "It is marvelous, Lord, it is wonderful. What is the name of this exposition of Dhamma?" Ananda, you may remember this exposition of Dhamma as the net of advantage, the net of Dhamma, the supreme net, the net of views, or as the incomparable victory in battle. Thus the Lord spoke, and the monks rejoiced and were delighted at his words. And as this exposition was being proclaimed, the 10,000 world system shook. That's the end of the sutta. This last part I like to comment, it's quite interesting. 3.73. The body of the Tathagata stands with the link that bound it to becoming cut. That is when a person becomes liberated, this being or becoming, bhava is cut. And this bhava, in the 12 links of dependent origination, there are different interpretations. But I think what bhava means is the I am. If a person has this view, I am or I exist, he is still in samsara. Only when you have let go the view that you have a self, so this becoming or this being is cut. So there is no living being. There's no living being because there is no self. So an enlightened being becomes like a tree. There is no self. He has consciousness, but of course he has more wisdom than the tree. But he has no self at all. But even though there is no self, he does not have mental dukkha, but he still has bodily dukkha. So here it says, as long as the body subsists, devas and humans will see him. But at the breaking up of the body, devas and humans will see him no more. And this is also mentioned in the Mahayana Diamond Sutra. But unfortunately, there are some Mahayana sutras that contradict this, like the Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutra, Shitigaba Sutra. And in that sutra, it says when the Buddha was about to speak, the Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutra, millions and millions of Buddhas came. The Buddhas have entered Nibbana, how can they come? And the Buddha also says in the sutras that you cannot find two Buddhas at the same time, two Sammasambuddhas. You can find many Pachika Buddhas, but never two Sammasambuddhas together. So you can see this Digha Nikaya, very long sutta. Just reading it out with not much explanation took me already 1 hour. So we have to end here this sutta for the night. Anything to discuss? Any comment? Otherwise we can talk a bit about meditation in case some of you are not very familiar with meditation. If you're going to stay here for 3 months, you're going to have to spend a lot of time meditating.
Can I ask about Wong View number 17, page 81? It read, there are monks, certain devas fall unconscious. And when that in other sutta, 5 aggregates must come together. How come this one do not do?
In the sutta, this you want me to explain about the asanya satta. Asanya means without perception. Sanya is perception. So these beings without perception. If a being has no perception, that means he has no consciousness. There's a sutta where the Buddha says in the, I think, Digha Nikaya, that when consciousness arises, it must come along with the 5 aggregates. Okay? There's no coming and going of consciousness without the 5 aggregates. So when you have a consciousness, that consciousness must reside in a body. Okay? But the other way around, the Buddha never said. The Buddha never said that if you have a body, you must have consciousness. No. The Buddha said, when you have consciousness, you must have the 5 aggregates. Okay? But in this case, this being is supposed to be in the 4th jhana plane. And if you heard one of my previous talks, I mentioned that my guess is that this being was an ascetic in the previous life who had attained the 4th jhana. And then he thought all our suffering comes from our consciousness. As long as we are conscious, as long as we are aware of suffering. So if this consciousness were to stop completely, then there will be no suffering. So they use the mind to crush the mind, which the Buddha also tried to do, but the Buddha was not successful. So if a person has fourth jhana, his mind is so strong, he crushes the consciousness until the consciousness stops. So because he's in that state where there is no consciousness, there is body. So because he practices this for long, when he dies, he's born in that 4th jhana realm, just body but no consciousness. And then he's there for a long time. When the consciousness arises, he passes away from there. Maybe into the 3rd jhana plane. And then, okay? What page? What page? 1.2. Page 71.
Yeah, in terms of livelihood, about the curing of those black magic and all these is considered livelihood.
For a monk working as a shaman, curing black magic and all that is wrong livelihood. Wrong livelihood. But there are certain exceptions. The Buddha, for example, the Buddha does not allow a monk to work as a doctor. But if he can cure those either other monks or those helpers in the monastery, those supporters in the monastery who like stewards who are very close supporters and helping dayakas, supporting the monks, then he is allowed to help, but not simply any Tom, Dick and Harry, because if he tries to help some person who don't have so much faith, then something goes wrong, then they put the blame on the monk. Just now I mentioned already, a monk is not allowed to work as a doctor, only to very close, except to very close monks and novices and Vihara supporters. There are some monks I know in Thailand. They do all these things. They help people get rid of ghosts, They help to cure people and all this. And you find there's a long queue of people waiting for him. Wherever he goes, all the sick people will be running after him. So he cannot practice at all. So that's why the Buddha don't allow monks to do all these things.
Those things that he does not do describe as base. For example, practicing of magic, medicine, weather forecast. But some of the practices like fortune tellers and Digha Nikaya, he described that those people who practice such an art is based and they normally end up in hell and very bad rebirth. When the Buddha said base Monday, for us Buddhists, to be shunned away from those kind except for medicine, like doctors to cure people, but like those feng shui, magic.
When the Buddha says these are base practices, he means from the point of view of a monk. If a person is on the spiritual path, he doesn't want to spend his time doing all these things. And have no time for practice. For lay people it's different.
One point on this Brahmajala some monks, scholastic monks, tend to put a lot of emphasis on the various views described as 62 views. But you can see here that the most important point is actually what the Buddha said is cutting off, coming. He described the views as
Page 90.
feelings. He says feelings. Or 3.71. With regard to all these views, they experience this feeling by repeated contact through the six sense basis. Then the last paragraph says, Mahathera understand as the living are the arising and passing away of the six sense bases of contact, their attraction, peril, and ignorance from them. He knows that it goes beyond all these views, which means page 89. Page 89, 3.71. I was thinking that this probably is one of the most more important points than the views which was described, the 62 views being described in the whole Suta. Then some monks attempt to explain what are the other views. Maybe Bhante said on this, for us studying the Suta, sometimes it's like a red herring, you go and pay attention, try to understand what all the other 62 views instead of really find out what is the Buddha's emphasis in this very Suta.
I think I mentioned already in the beginning that if you study all these views, it's not going to make you become enlightened. It's not going to make you a Sotapanna or Sakadagamin and all that. So it's not important. what is important, the Buddha always says, is to see there is no self. And the self is always, the Buddha says, in the body and the mind. We always take the body and the mind to be the self. So to see that there is no self, you have to see there is no self in the body and the mind. So the 5 aggregates is one of the very important topics. The other one is the 6 bases. 6 sense bases. Actually, if you look carefully, the 6 sense bases also refers to the body and the mind. It's also body and the mind, because the 6 base, the mind is the mind base. The first 5 are all the body base. So the other one is the dependent origination. If you know how suffering arises, then only you can get rid of suffering. So these are the 3 most important topics, the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense bases, and dependent origination. And like these views, the Buddha says views are not important at all, and Buddha has gone beyond views. So why you want to study so much about views? So we can end here. So I want to talk a bit about meditation, because some of you are going to spend 3 months here, and maybe you want to know something more about meditation. The Buddha's meditation is given in the Majjhima Nikaya. When Venerable Ananda was asked what type of meditation is praised by the Buddha, what type of meditation is not praised by the Buddha, and Venerable Ananda gave a very straightforward answer. The meditation that is praised by the Buddha is the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. And the meditation that is not praised by the Buddha is the type of meditation when you practice the meditation, you cannot get rid of the 5 hindrances. This is very clear in the Sutta. So the only way to get rid of the 5 hindrances is to attain the jhanas. This is quite clear from the Suttas. So any meditation that we practice has to... the aim should be to attain the jhanas, because when you attain the jhanas, then your mind becomes what is called bhavana, developed. When your mind is developed, then you see from a higher level, you know and see from a higher level. So initially the Buddha taught, the first method of meditation the Buddha taught was the 32 parts of the body, which for most people is hard to practice, because first you have to learn to memorize the 32 parts of the body, head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinew, bone, marrow, kidney, heart, liver, midriff, spleen, lung, etc. So after that you go forward, you go backward. And if you chant slowly, that is a contemplation exercise to make you see the body is made out of these 32 parts. If you chant slowly and you think about these 32 parts frequently, then it sticks in your mind. So when you see a person, you think of the 32 parts. Normally, for most people, when we see somebody, we see beautiful or ugly. It's all skin deep only. As they say, beauty is only skin deep. We never think about the inside. So because of that, we have attraction to the body, lust. So it's one of the reasons we remain in samsara. So I was thinking, why did the Buddha teach the 32 parts of the body as a first meditation when he himself never practiced it? So I think all Buddhas, when they want to teach, all Sammasambuddhas, they would have contemplated the past, what other Buddhas taught, and then they teach the same thing. So probably other Buddhas also taught this, so the Buddha taught this. But then this meditation, if you practice it frequently, then you become disgusted with the body. So some of the monks committed suicide. Then after that, the Buddha was asked to teach another meditation. Then the Buddha taught Anapanasati. These are the 2 main meditations that the Buddha taught in the Suttas and in the Vinaya. There were some others which were already popular even before the Buddha's time, like the Kasinas, meditating on earth, meditating on color, meditating on fire, meditating on water, and all these things. So, but the 2 main meditations of the Buddha are these 2. So as a shortcut to practicing the first one, instead of reciting the 32 parts of the body, you can chant something simpler like Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. If you just chant Namo Buddhaya, after a while your mind will start roaming. So what you need to do is put another rope around the mind, and that is to, when you chant Namo, you can move one of your right fingers, any one of your right finger, very lightly, very subtly, nobody will notice. And then when you say Buddhaya, you move your left finger, any one of your left finger. So because you have to synchronize the Namo with the finger movement and the Buddhaya with the finger movement, the mind doesn't run away so fast. Similarly, when you walk meditation, when your right foot touches the ground, you say Namo. When your left foot touches the ground, you say Buddhaya. So whether you want to walk fast or you want to walk slow, it's up to you. If you are sleepy, you walk faster, and also sleepy, you walk slower. So that is a simple thing. Now the other thing you need to know is meditation. If you are practicing one method of meditation, you are not making progress, you can switch to another method. So Anapanasati is to watch the breath go in, go out. Also the same, as you are watching your breath, very soon your mind will run away. So you have to pull another rope. The other rope is to mentally chant. When the breath goes in, you say in. When the breath goes out, you say out. That also is not enough. So another thing to do is make a bit of effort to pull the breath down to the abdomen. Because if you make a bit of effort to pull the breath down to the abdomen, it helps to relax your body. When we are very relaxed, we breathe, the abdomen goes up and down. When somebody is asleep, you watch like a baby is asleep, deep sleep, you find the abdomen goes up and down. So when we are when we are tense, we tend to breathe shallow breathing, only up to the chest. So when to help yourself to relax, purposely pull your breath slightly, not down to your abdomen, and then out. So you notice the breath going down to your abdomen. This breath meditation is called body contemplation of the body, because the Buddha said the breath body. You are supposed to contemplate the breath body. But later books like the Visuddhimagga, they say to meditate at a point, at the tip of your nose or your upper lip. This is not what the Buddha said. The Buddha said to contemplate the breath body. So you can follow the breath if you want, and notice it come to the abdomen, and then go out through your nostril. And sometimes for most people this is still not enough. The mind will still wander. So what you can do is when you say in, when the breath goes in and you say in, you move one of your right fingers. Move one of your right fingers slightly. And then when it goes out, you don't need to move any finger. When it goes in, you move one of your fingers. The Buddha said in the Suttas that mindfulness of the body leads to the deathlessness. Mindfulness of the body. And this body can be breath body, can be the physical body. But one thing you must notice, when our mind strays, and the mind starts to think of, as we say in Hokkien, going east, going west, xiao tang, xiao sai, then you forgot about yourself sitting in meditation. You forgot you are here sitting in meditation. You are roaming here and there. The moment you remember you are here sitting in meditation, the thinking is cut straight away. So it helps if you move your finger. If you move your finger when the breath goes in, you move your finger slightly, then you are aware of your body and the mind does not run away. So you can try that. Whenever you're sleepy or what, you find it hard to concentrate, then you move your finger slightly. When the breath goes in, you say in, and also try to pull it down to the Tan Tien, your abdomen. And so on the in breath, you move a finger slightly. On the out breath, no need to move. So these are different ways to putting more rope around the mind to prevent it jumping away. The mind is like a monkey, always trying to jump away. Any question? Louder, please. This loving kindness meditation nowadays, people teach is to chant, may I be well and happy, may so and so be well and happy, may everybody be well and happy. This is not the Buddha's method. In the Buddha's method, in the suttas, the Buddha says first you attain the jhana, then after that you radiate the loving kindness out, and other beings can feel it. Okay? But that is difficult because most people don't have the first jhana. Okay, so another way, a simpler way to do, but which is effective, and the Buddha says for us to practice is that to practice loving kindness through the body, speech, and mind, through our body actions, through our speech, and always to have kind thoughts. So body actions means like you shake hands with people, you give people a hug. That is body action. Not raise a stick or or what. So that is body action. The other one is verbal action. Verbal action through your speech, especially like through your people work in the office. Sometimes people are very stressed out. So you have used kind words, people appreciate. Don't raise your voice. The Buddha said a good speech has a few characteristics. First, it must be truthful, then it must be beneficial, then it must be spoken gently, then it must be spoken with a mind of love, and what else? One more. Must be timely. When a person is angry, don't give him advice. He doesn't want to hear your advice. When he's not angry, then you can give him advice if you want. So, especially body action and verbal language, body language and verbal language. That is the way to show loving kindness. Then mind also. The mind is to consider that everyone in this world is suffering. Sometimes a person is not nice to you. You think maybe he's got problems in the house, family problems. So he's stressed out. Come to office very. So if you think kind thoughts like this, then you people can sense it. For example, if somebody is nasty to you, you don't retaliate. You just accept it. Maybe my karma, previous life, I created bad karma. Now people are like that towards me. So you whatever people bad give to you, you just accept. After some time, they see you are very special, you are different. Then they are nice to you. Okay. Okay.
Hello. I have a basic question on meditation. Where was it mentioned in the Suta, when you meditate, you have to open the eye and close the eye, how do you do that?
Okay, generally, we close our eyes, because if you open your eyes, you're not going to get into a deep state of concentration. If you want to get into a deep state of concentration, you have to close your eyes. But for a lot of beginners, when you close your eye, you fall asleep. Especially people who do a lot of physical work. So in that case, you have to half open your eye. Half open. And look about 6 or 10 feet away on the ground. Okay, let's end here, getting late.